Deep within the scorched earth of modern-day Pakistan lies the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, a city that may have met its end in a flash of blinding, impossible light. This cornerstone of the Indus Valley civilization presents a mystery so terrifying that many historians refuse to speak its name: the forensic evidence of a prehistoric catastrophe. As we investigate the radioactive skeletons found in these streets, we must ask if the bomb was truly a 20th century invention or a rediscovered nightmare from our forgotten past. For nearly 5,000 years, the sands of the Indus held their breath, burying a civilization that was arguably more advanced than the Romans or the Greeks who would follow millennia later. When archaeologists finally broke the seal on this site in 1922, they didn't just find a city. They found a ghost story written in brick and bone. The streets of Mohenjo-Daro were laid out in a perfect grid, a feat of urban planning that suggests a level of mathematical precision we wouldn't see again until the industrial era. But scattered across this orderly paradise were the remains of individuals caught in positions that suggest they were not buried by loved ones, but dropped where they stood, frozen in a final moment of agony. This is the ultimate season finale mystery, a case where the forensic data contradicts every history book ever written. Before we dive into the forbidden texts, look at your own city for a second. If everything vanished tomorrow, what one piece of technology would leave future archaeologists most confused about us? Let me know in the comments. I'm reading every single one to see who has the most creative answer. The legend of this destruction finds its roots in the most sacred texts of the East. The Mahabharata, an epic poem of celestial wars, speaks of a weapon called the Agneya. It describes a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, creating an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns. These verses, written thousands of years before the first test at Los Alamos, describe the aftermath with chilling accuracy: hair and nails falling out, food becoming poisonous, and soldiers throwing themselves into rivers to wash away an invisible fire. To the early 20th century scholars, this was mere mythology. But to those who saw the mushroom clouds over Japan, it sounded like a first-hand account of a nuclear winter. The radioactive skeleton theory gained global momentum in the 1960s and 70s when researchers like Alexander Gorbovsky and David Davenport claimed that the remains in Deadman's Lane showed radiation levels 50 times higher than the surrounding soil. They pointed to a specific area of the city, a 50-yard radius they called the epicenter, where the very earth appeared to have been vitrified. Vitrification is a process where soil and brick are subjected to temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius, turning them into a dark, glass-like substance. In our modern age, we have seen this phenomenon in only two places: deep inside volcanic craters and at the Trinity nuclear test site in New Mexico. How did a Bronze Age culture, supposedly limited to copper tools and clay kilns, generate the heat of 1,000 furnaces in a single city block? If you're enjoying this deep dive into the forbidden truths of the Indus, hit the like button right now. It tells the algorithm that real history, the kind they don't teach in schools, is what we want to see. As we peel back the layers of this mystery, the danger of the massacre theory becomes clear. Sir Mortimer Wheeler, the man who brought Mohenjo-Daro to the world's attention, was convinced the city had been put to the sword by invading Aryan tribes. He saw the contorted skeletons as victims of a brutal raid, but there is a glaring hole in this narrative. Modern forensic reevaluations have found absolutely no signs of trauma on the bones. No sword hacks, no arrowheads embedded in ribs, no crushed skulls from maces. These people weren't killed by soldiers. They died from something they couldn't see or something they couldn't run from. This haphazard disposal of the dead is the ultimate forensic anomaly. In a culture that valued order and hygiene above all else, leaving a body in the street was the ultimate sign of a total and instantaneous social collapse. But was it really an atomic blast, or something even more technologically sophisticated? The Harappans were masters of a lost science known as pyrotechnology. While the rest of the world was struggling to bake basic bread, The people of Mohenjo-Daro were manufacturing stoneware bangles, highly prized luxury items that required incredibly precise, high-pressure kilns. To create these, they had to reach temperatures of at least 1,100 degrees Celsius and maintain them for hours. Recent 2025 analysis of the vitrified areas suggests that these blast epicenters might actually have been massive, concentrated industrial zones where the city's elite deep state was perfecting the art of artificial stone. Which is more terrifying to imagine, a sudden, blinding nuclear flash that ended this superpower in a single second, or a slow-motion doomsday where the water simply stopped and the city died of thirst over 100 years? Drop a comment right now. Flash, if you believe in the ancient bomb theory, or famine if you think nature was the true killer. Your choice says a lot about how you view the fragility of our own modern world. As we move into the science of the collapse, we must look at the river walk. The Indus River was the lifeblood of Mohenjo-Daro, providing the water for its legendary Great Bath and its self-cleaning drainage systems. But the earth beneath the city was restless. Tectonic activity began to shift the river's course, moving it further and further away from the city walls. By the time the final residents were walking the streets, the river was 30 kilometers away. A city of 40,000 people cannot survive in a desert. The most recent data from late 2025 and 2026 climate studies, utilizing oxygen isotopes found in cave stalagmites across northern India, has confirmed a 113-year megadrought that paralyzed the region starting around 1900 BCE. This was not a standard drought. It was a multi-generational atmospheric collapse that saw monsoons shift entirely away from the Indus Basin. The radioactive skeletons might not have been victims of a blast, but the very last squatters, the desperate few who stayed behind in a ghost town, dying of anemia and infection while the world around them turned to sand. Forensic data updated in early 2026 shows that many of these individuals suffered from chronic malnutrition, suggesting they were the casualties of a failing ecosystem rather than a battlefield. To understand the scale of this loss, we have to look at the deep state of the Indus. Unlike the pharaohs of Egypt, who built massive monuments to their own ego, the rulers of Mohenjo-Daro built for the people. Every single brick in the city, and indeed across the entire civilization spanning thousands of miles, was fired to the exact same ratio, 4 to 2 to 1. This is a level of bureaucratic control that is staggering. It implies a central authority that could enforce standards across a territory larger than modern-day Western Europe. This headless superpower operated without palaces or massive temples. Instead, they focused on what we call environmental engineering. They built massive brick platforms to elevate the city above the floodwaters of the Indus. They engineered self-cleaning latrines and a sewer system that was 4,000 years ahead of its time. This level of investment in public health implies a society that believed it would last forever. When we find bodies in the streets of such a place, it is equivalent to finding bodies in the streets of modern-day Tokyo or New York. It represents a total failure of the systems that define civilization. At Ancient Chronicles HD, we don't just look at the ruins, we decode the forensic data that history books are too afraid to touch. Our mission is to bridge the gap between ancient myth and modern science, proving that the past is far more complex and far more dangerous than we were ever taught in school. We believe that the secrets of the ancients are the keys to our own survival. If you want to be part of this mission to uncover the forbidden truths of our ancestors, hit that subscribe button and join our community of truth seekers. The mystery of the unicorn seals also points to a hidden layer of this society. Recent AI-driven analysis in late 2025 suggests that these seals, found by the thousands, were not religious icons but a sophisticated form of decentralized tracking, a way of managing trade and identity in a world without a king. Using deep learning models to map the syntax of the undeciphered script, researchers in early 2026 have identified patterns that mirror modern digital ledgers. If the Harappans had such advanced social systems and high-temperature stoneware technology, what else did they have? Could the descriptions in the Mahabharata be a garbled memory of a power source we have yet to rediscover? Or perhaps they stumbled upon a natural phenomenon that mirrored the effects of a nuclear detonation. While we may never find a rusted casing of an ancient bomb, the evidence of a great vitrification remains a physical reality. Whether it was a localized nuclear event, a massive industrial accident in their high-heat labs, or a celestial impact, the result was the same: the total erasure of the world's most peaceful civilization. The skeletons in the street remain as silent witnesses, not just to a tragedy, but to a warning. They lived in a world of perfect grids, clean water, and advanced science, yet they were powerless against the shifting of the earth and the drying of the clouds. We must also consider the airburst theory, a scientific middle ground that bridges the gap between myths and geology. In 2024, researchers studying the Tal el Hammam site in the Levant found evidence of a cosmic airburst that vaporized a city with the force of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. Could Mohenjo-Daro have suffered a similar fate? A comet exploding in the atmosphere would create the blinding light, the intense heat required for vitrification, and the sudden death of the population without the trauma associated with hand-to-hand combat. This would explain why the Mahabharata speaks of a projectile rather than a grounded weapon. A comet impact would not leave a crater if it exploded several miles above the Earth, but the thermal radiation would be enough to melt the very bricks of the city. The sheer scale of the Indus Valley civilization is often underestimated. At its peak, it was a network of over 1,000 cities and settlements. Yet within a few generations, this massive network of trade and technology collapsed. The abandonment of Mohenjo-Daro was not an isolated event. It was the falling of the first domino in a global catastrophe. By investigating these radioactive ruins, we aren't just looking at a dead city. We are looking at a mirror. Our own modern cities rely on delicate systems of water, power, and climate stability. If a civilization as organized as the Harappans could be erased from the face of the earth, what does that say about our own permanence? Furthermore, the construction of the city itself reveals a deep understanding of fluid dynamics. The Great Bath, often called the world's first swimming pool, was lined with bitumen, a natural tar, to make it completely watertight. This was 4,500 years ago. The engineering required to keep such a massive structure from leaking into the surrounding soil is immense. The Harappans weren't just primitive people. They were master chemists and architects. Let's talk about the Headless Superpower one more time. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, we see massive monuments to individual glory: the pyramids of Giza, the ziggurats of Ur, the statues of Ramses. In Mohenjo-Daro, we find none of that. There are no depictions of war, no scenes of kings trampling their enemies, and no massive temples dedicated to a specific deity. This suggests a collective governance, perhaps a council of merchants or priests who ruled through consensus rather than coercion. This makes the atomic theory even more tragic. It was a peaceful, democratic society that was suddenly silenced. In the 1970s, Davenport's team allegedly found 3 distinct layers of destruction at the site. The top layer showed evidence of the decline, the squatter period where quality of brickwork plummeted. But the layer beneath it was the one that sparked the controversy. It was a layer of ash and charcoal mingled with those vitrified black stones. Skeptics argue that this layer was simply the result of localized fires, common in cities built of wood and brick. But fires do not reach the 3,000-degree temperatures required to melt clay into glass. To achieve that, you need a catalyst. You need a concentrated energy source. This brings us to the forbidden truth of Harappan metallurgy. We know they were proficient in copper and bronze, but some researchers have suggested they were experimenting with exotic alloys. Is it possible that in their quest for higher temperatures and stronger materials, they triggered an industrial accident of cataclysmic proportions? In our own history, the Demon Core and the Chernobyl disaster showed how quickly advanced science can turn into a death sentence. If the Harappans were playing with the building blocks of matter, they may have learned a lesson that took us another 4,000 years to relearn. As we close this season finale on the mysteries of the Indus, we are left with a haunting realization. Mohenjo-Daro didn't just fall, it was abandoned. The people took their knowledge, their standard weights, and their dreams, and they scattered into the fog of history. They became the ancestors of the very people who would go on to build the great empires of India. The bomb might have been a myth, or it might have been a reality far more terrifying than we can imagine. But the power they wielded over their environment was very real, and its sudden loss is a lesson for our own era of climate instability and technological hubris. The skeletons in Deadman's Lane will never speak, but their bones tell a story of a day when the sun came to Earth. Whether it was delivered by a projectile from the gods or by the slow, agonizing grip of a changing planet, the result was the same: the end of an era. We invite you to look closely at the walls of this ancient city. Do you see the marks of a fire that burned at 3,000 degrees? Or do you see the crumbling bricks of a city that simply ran out of time? The quest for the truth at Mohenjo-Daro is not just about the past, it is about our future. As we stand on the brink of our own technological and environmental crossroads, the radioactive city serves as a stark reminder of how fragile our perfect grids really are. We are a species with a short memory, but the Earth remembers. It remembers the heat, the dust, and the silence. Finally, we must consider the linguistic silence of the Indus. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, which allowed us to crack the code of Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Indus script remains undeciphered. Over 400 distinct signs have been identified, yet no one knows what they mean. Some believe it is a Proto-Dravidian language, others think it is a completely lost tongue. This lack of a written record means that the Harappans are a people without a voice. We are left to piece together their story from the physical evidence they left behind: the bricks, the beads, and the bones. If we could read their words, would they tell us of a great war? Would they warn us of a weapon that turned the sun into darkness? Or would they simply tell us how to manage a city of 40,000 people in a world of drying rivers? The mystery of Mohenjo-Daro is a puzzle with missing pieces, and every new discovery, from the 2025 climate data to the 2026 AI-driven seal analysis, adds another fragment to the picture. But the full image remains elusive, shimmering like a mirage in the desert heat. Thank you for joining us for this special investigation. We are Ancient Chronicles HD, and we are dedicated to bringing you the stories that time tried to bury. If you found this deep dive into the radioactive secrets of Mohenjo-Daro compelling, make sure to explore our archive of forbidden history. The world is much older and much more mysterious than you've been led to believe. Until our next journey into the past, stay curious, stay skeptical, and never stop searching for the truth.